Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner Stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I paid a hitman on the dark web to scare my friend as a prank. 2 days later, he went missing. Alright, I know how this sounds. The second you read the title, you probably rolled your eyes and thought, this guy's either an idiot or a liar. But I swear to you, this is real. And if I could take it back, I would. I'd give anything to undo what I did. It started as a stupid joke. Just something to mess with my friend, Jake. He's one of those guys who acts like nothing ever scares him. Horror movies? He laughs at them. Ghost stories? He calls them fake. Even when we went to this supposedly haunted asylum in upstate New York, he was the only one casually scrolling through TikTok like we weren't surrounded by rusted wheelchairs and satanic graffiti. So one night, after a few drinks, I got this brilliant idea. I was watching some YouTube deep dive about the dark web. You know, those videos where they show red rooms, illegal auctions, all that crazy stuff. It got me thinking, what if I hired a hitman just to mess with Jake? Not to hurt him, obviously. Just to, follow him around. Maybe send a creepy text, knock on his window at night. Something to actually freak him out for once. It sounded hilarious in my head at the time. Now, before you judge me too hard, let me be clear. I didn't actually think I'd find a real hitman. I assumed the dark web was 99% scammers, people selling fake hacking services or pretending to be assassins for Bitcoin. So I went in with the mindset that it was all fake anyway. Just a fun little rabbit hole to go down. I downloaded Tor, got a VPN, and after a few hours of digging through sketchy forums and bizarre hidden sites, I found a place called the Silent Chamber. It had this old school 2005 looking layout with a plain black background and white text. There were service options ranging from scare tactics to full-on assassinations. Some listings had customer reviews, which were the creepiest part. They weren't like, good service, would hire again. They were vague, written in short sentences like, he disappeared as promised, no loose ends. She won't be talking anymore, worth every penny. I should have closed the site right then, but I was so sure it was all just roleplay, an internet LARP for psychos. So I clicked on a listing called Soft Scare Package. The description said, for those looking to unsettle, intimidate, or shake someone up without lasting consequences, no physical harm, customizable to your needs. Perfect, right? I figured I'd get some dude in a ski mask to lurk around Jake's house, maybe send him a threatening email, just something subtle to see him finally freak out. I had to pay in Bitcoin, which was a nightmare to set up. But once I transferred the money, about $300, I got an email, a real email, from a guy named Marius. The message was simple. We've received your request. Provide your target's full name, address, and any specific instructions. We will handle the rest. This should have been the second red flag. There was no friendly customer service. No, thanks for choosing the Silent Chamber. Just cold efficiency. But again, I thought it was all part of the act, so I sent Jake's info. along with some dumb requests. Follow him home a few times. Leave an anonymous note in his mailbox. Maybe stand outside his window at night, just staring. I hit send, and that was it. I didn't hear anything back. No confirmation, no tracking number. Nothing. A full day passed, and I just assumed I'd been scammed. I even told Jake about it the next day, laughing about how I wasted $300 trying to mess with him. He just smirked and said, "Nice try, dude. Maybe next time, buy a haunted doll or something." I was about to forget the whole thing. Then, on the second night, Jake texted me at 2:37 a.m. "Not funny, dude. Don't ever do that again." I was half asleep, confused as hell. I texted back, "What?" He didn't answer. The next morning, he wasn't in class. I FaceTimed him, but it rang out. The dude practically lived on his phone, so that was weird. I figured maybe he just pulled an all-nighter and slept through his alarms. Then I checked Snapchat. He hadn't posted in 16 hours. That never happened. His snap score didn't even move. By noon, I was getting worried. I drove to his apartment, knocked, called his name. Nothing. His car was in the lot. His curtains were shut. I tried the door. It was unlocked. That's when I started to feel wrong. Jake was paranoid about safety. He locked his door even when he took the trash out. There was no way he'd just leave it open. I stepped inside. The lights were off. The air smelled stale, like no one had been breathing in here for hours. The only sound was the hum of his mini fridge. Then I saw his phone, lying face up on the kitchen counter. The screen was shattered, like it had been thrown. I picked it up. The last app open was his camera. My heart started pounding. I swiped to his gallery. The most recent photo made my stomach drop. It was taken at 2:33 a.m., right before he texted me. It was dark and blurry, but I could still make it out. Jake, sitting up in bed, looking past the camera, his face twisted in pure terror. And behind him, in the corner of his room, a tall black figure, standing perfectly still. I stood there, gripping Jake's phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. My whole body felt cold, like I had just walked into a freezer. The image on the screen was burned into my brain. Jake, sitting up in his bed, his face frozen in terror, and that thing standing in the corner of his room. I wanted to tell myself it was a shadow, some trick of the light, but I knew it wasn't. The shape was too solid, too defined. It had a human form, long, thin limbs, slightly hunched posture, but its face, there was no face, just a void, a black, featureless mass where a face should be. And the worst part, it was looking at him. My stomach twisted. I could barely breathe. Something about the image felt wrong on a level I couldn't explain, like my brain was trying to reject it. It wasn't just a photo of someone breaking into Jake's apartment. It was like a moment from a nightmare, something that shouldn't exist in real life. I swiped through the rest of his camera roll with shaking fingers. There were 5 more photos, all taken within seconds of each other. The second image, the thing had moved. It was closer to the bed now, still just standing there, watching him. The third image, Jake was scrambling out of bed, half blurred from motion. The thing was right beside him, close enough to touch. The fourth image, the camera had tilted. The shot was mostly floor, but I could still see Jake's legs, mid-run, sprinting for the door. The thing's arm was reaching toward him. The fifth image, a mess of motion blur. No way to tell what happened. Just darkness, a streak of pale skin, and a twisted shape in the background. That was the last one. The timestamps showed they were all taken at 2:33 a.m., right before Jake texted me, right before he disappeared. I wanted to vomit. I backed away from the counter, nearly dropping his phone. I forced myself to take a deep breath, but the air felt thick and stale. I glanced around the apartment. It was empty. No signs of a struggle. No blood. No broken furniture. Just silence. But something was wrong. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. I even yanked open the fridge like a damn idiot, half expecting to find... what? His severed head? I didn't know. The whole place felt abandoned, but not in a normal way. It wasn't just that Jake was missing. It was like he had never been here to begin with. His bed was perfectly made. His shoes were neatly lined up by the door. There were no dirty dishes in the sink, no half-finished drink on the coffee table. The only thing out of place was his shattered phone, like he had just been erased. My breathing grew shallow. I kept telling myself to call the cops, but something stopped me. A deep, gut-level instinct screaming at me that this wasn't something the cops could fix. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw movement. I spun around so fast I almost tripped. The closet door. It was slightly open. I could have sworn it had been shut before. A slow, quiet creak. The door moved. An inch, maybe less. My whole body locked up. The air in the room shifted, like something else was breathing with me, watching me. I stepped backward, keeping my eyes on the closet. My heartbeat was pounding in my ears. I didn't want to look inside. I knew I shouldn't, but I did. I reached out with trembling fingers and pulled the door open. It was empty. At first, just a row of jackets, a few boxes stacked in the corner. But then I noticed something. The back wall. It wasn't right. The shadows fell at an angle that didn't make sense, like the wall wasn't actually there, like it was deeper than it should be. I hesitated, then reached forward. My hand touched nothing. There was no wall, just an opening, a gap, barely wide enough for a person, a hidden space behind the closet. I swallowed hard, then pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, and I saw the staircase. Narrow, concrete, leading down. It didn't make sense. Jake's apartment was on the second floor. There shouldn't be any kind of basement, but the stairs were there, leading deep into the earth. Something in my brain screamed at me to run, to get the hell out of there, but my body didn't listen. I took a step forward, then another. Then, from below, deep in the darkness, a sound, a slow, scraping sound, like something heavy being dragged across stone. Then a whisper, not in English, not in any language I knew, just a dry, rasping voice, muttering something too low to understand. I turned and ran. I didn't care if I looked like a coward. I didn't care if I left Jake's phone behind. I sprinted out of the apartment, down the hall, out into the parking lot. My heart was slamming against my ribs. I didn't stop until I was in my car, doors locked, engine running. That's when I checked my own phone. I had one new notification, an email from Marius. Your request has been fulfilled. No loose ends. I stared at the screen, my vision tunneling. My hands went numb. No loose ends. I sat there in the car, trying to breathe, trying to think. I wanted to believe it was just a coincidence, that Jake had left town, that this was all some elaborate prank. Then my phone buzzed again. Another email. This one had an attachment, a video. I didn't want to open it, but I did. It started in darkness, just audio at first, labored breathing, something wet dragging across the floor. Then slowly, the screen lit up. A dim, flickering light bulb. A concrete room. The camera was shaky, moving closer to something. Someone. Jake. He was lying on the floor, his back to the camera. He wasn't moving. His skin looked wrong. Too pale, too stiff. Then, behind him, movement. The thing, that same faceless figure, crouched beside him, one long bony hand resting on Jake's back. The camera moved closer. The thing turned. And I swear to God, it was looking at me, like it knew I was watching. The video cut to black. I dropped my phone. My whole body was shaking. My vision blurred. Then, the final email came. 3 words. You're next. I don't remember driving home. One moment, I was in my car, shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. The next, I was parked in my driveway, staring blankly at the garage door. My hands were white-knuckled, my breathing ragged. The weight of my phone in my pocket felt wrong, like it was a ticking bomb that could go off at any second. That video, Jake's lifeless body, that thing crouched over him, and the way it turned to look at me, as if it could see through the screen, as if it knew me. I forced myself to move, stepping out of the car and locking it behind me. The night air was still, too quiet. My street was empty, not even a distant sound of traffic or a dog barking, just silence, a heavy, suffocating silence that made me feel like I was being watched. I hurried inside, locking the door, deadbolt, chain. Every light in the house went on. I checked every room, every closet, even under my bed, like I was a damn kid afraid of the boogeyman. But I was afraid, more than I had ever been in my entire life. Something was coming for me. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, dreading what I might see if I opened it. That last email. You're next. I didn't even want to touch the damn thing. I imagined it vibrating in my hand, new messages coming in, unread notifications piling up, each one pulling me closer to something I couldn't escape. But I had to know. I reached into my pocket, fingers trembling. The screen lit up. 5 unread emails, all from Marius. I swallowed hard. My mouth was dry, my throat tight. My thumb hovered over the first message. Then, a soft tap on the window behind me. I jumped, nearly dropping my phone. My breath hitched in my throat. I turned my head slowly. The blinds were shut, but I knew what I heard. Another tap, louder this time. Something was outside. I stood up, legs stiff, my entire body screaming at me not to look. But I had to. I had to know. I reached for the blind cord, heart hammering. I yanked it open in one quick motion. Nothing. Just the backyard, dimly lit by the porch light, the fence, the trees swaying slightly in the wind. I let out a shaky breath. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe. Then I noticed something. The glass. There was a handprint, pressed against the outside of the window. Not a normal handprint. Number. The fingers were too long. The palm was too narrow. The shape was wrong. And it was still wet. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My stomach lurched. The air felt thick, wrong, like the walls were closing in. Then my phone buzzed. A new email. I didn't want to look, but I did. Opened the door. No subject line, no sender. Just those 3 words. I stared at my phone, heart pounding in my ears. My vision blurred at the edges. My breathing came in short, sharp gasps. Then, knock, knock, knock. The front door. I froze. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Not the hurried pounding of someone in danger. Not the impatient rapping of a neighbor. Someone was waiting. I gripped my phone so tight my fingers ached. My body refused to move. I just stood there, paralyzed. Knock, knock, knock. Louder this time, more insistent. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another email. I see you. A choke noise escaped my throat. My entire body was ice cold, my stomach twisting in pure animal terror. I turned, slowly, toward the peephole. The hallway beyond the door was dark. The porch light barely reached past the threshold. But something was standing there. I couldn't see it clearly. Just a shape. A tall, thin silhouette. Motionless. Watching. Then, it moved. Not like a normal person. Not a shift in weight or a turn of the head. It jerked, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. I stumbled backward. My knees nearly gave out. Then the porch light flickered, and for half a second, I saw it clearly. No face. Just a smooth, featureless void where a face should be. I bolted. I ran down the hall, into my bedroom, slamming the door shut behind me. I shoved my dresser against it, my hands shaking so violently I could barely move. My breath came in shallow gasps. Then, silence. I listened, barely daring to breathe. No more knocking. No more movement. Had it left? Then my phone vibrated. One last email. I stared at the screen, my whole body trembling. "You're already dead." The screen glitched. My vision swam. The lights flickered. And behind me, a whisper. Right against my ear. A dry, rasping voice. I turned, and everything went black. I woke up somewhere else. I don't remember blacking out. One moment, I was in my room, the air thick with that awful whisper, something brushing against my skin, something that wasn't there. And the next, I was here, cold, damp, the smell of wet concrete, and something else, rot. I opened my eyes. The world swam, shapes twisting and blurring in the dim light. My head throbbed like someone had cracked my skull open and stitched it back together wrong. I tried to move, couldn't. My wrists were bound, something rough and tight, digging into my skin. Rope. I was sitting on a concrete floor, a basement, maybe a warehouse. The walls were rough, unfinished, the kind you see in buildings that were never completed. Exposed beams stretched across the ceiling. A single light bulb flickered above me, casting long, shifting shadows. Then I heard it, a sound so wet and wrong that my stomach twisted, like something heavy dragging across the floor. Slow, deliberate. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. Then a low wheeze, not breathing, mocking breathing. A dry, rattling sound, like something pretending to inhale and exhale. It was close. I turned my head, slowly, toward the far end of the room, and I saw it. A figure, too tall, too thin, limbs stretched too long, like someone had taken a human shape and pulled it in the wrong directions. Its skin was black, not like a shadow, but like absence, like it was made of something that light refused to touch. And its face, no face, just a blank, smooth surface, where a mouth, eyes, a nose should have been. But I knew it was looking at me. I felt it. My heart slammed against my ribs, my pulse hammering so fast I thought it might burst. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. Then, it twitched. A single, sharp movement. Its head tilted too far to one side, like a broken doll. The air grew heavy, something thick and invisible pressing against my chest. My vision swam. My ears rang. The walls seemed to breathe. Then it stepped closer. A slow, jerking movement, like it wasn't used to its own body, like it was learning. That horrible, wet, dragging sound. I realized it wasn't coming from its feet. It was from something behind it. A shape. A second figure. Crawling. Oh God. It was Jake. But it wasn't Jake anymore. His body was wrong. His limbs bent at the wrong angles, like his bones had been rearranged under his skin. His mouth stretched too wide, like his jaw had been unhinged. His eyes, gone. Just black, empty sockets. But he was still moving, crawling toward me. A choked sound tore from my throat. Tears burned my eyes. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I squeezed my eyes shut, shaking, my wrists burning against the rope. My breath came in ragged gasps. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Then, fingers on my face. Cold, thin, wrong. My eyes snapped open. The faceless thing was inches away. It had crouched down, its head tilting side to side in twitching, erratic movements, studying me. Something shifted beneath its skin, like it was trying to make a mouth, trying to copy a human expression, but failing. And then, it whispered, but it wasn't a voice. Not in the way we understand voices. It was like 100 voices at once, layered over each other. Jake's voice, my own voice, a woman sobbing, a child laughing, a man screaming, all at the same time, tangled into a single, suffocating sound. You did this. My entire body convulsed. The words weren't just words. They dug into my head, burrowing into my skull like a parasite, threading themselves into my thoughts. I screamed. I think. I don't know. Then it reached for me. Its hand stretched, fingers too long, curling toward my face. I thrashed, kicked, fought against the ropes, my skin burning, my muscles screaming. And then, a noise, a distant mechanical clunk. The figure stopped, jerked its head toward the ceiling. Another noise, a door opening, footsteps. I barely processed it at first. My mind was too shattered, too focused on the thing in front of me. But it was moving now, backing away, its head still cocked at that unnatural angle, still watching me, but retreating into the shadows. Jake, or what was left of Jake, slithered after it, disappearing into the dark. Then the lights flickered, and suddenly, I was alone. The basement door swung open, bright light poured in, too bright, blinding, and then a voice, sharp, familiar, human. Jesus Christ, we found one. Hands grabbed me, cut the ropes, pulled me up. I collapsed against them. My legs didn't work. I looked up. A man in a black uniform, tactical gear, bulletproof vest, a gun slung over his back, a badge on his chest. FBI. FBI. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My throat burned. He's in shock, the agent barked. Get a medic in here. I was dragged up the stairs, my body barely working. The bright lights hurt. My vision blurred. My ears buzzed. The last thing I saw before I blacked out again. The basement. Empty. Like nothing had ever been there. I woke up to the sound of voices. Muffled. Distant. Like they were talking underwater. My head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. My body heavy. Like I had been buried under wet cement. My eyelids peeled open with effort. White. Blinding white. A ceiling. Fluorescent lights humming. The sterile smell of antiseptic. A hospital. I was in a hospital. For a brief, beautiful second, I thought it was over. That I had been rescued. That whatever thing had taken Jake, whatever had whispered in my ear, crawled into my mind, was gone. Then I saw the mirror. A long rectangular mirror on the far wall. But I knew what it really was. A two-way mirror. Someone was watching me. I tried to move. My wrists burned. I looked down. Straps. They had strapped me to the hospital bed. Panic shot through my chest. I struggled against the restraints. A sharp beep filling the air. My heart monitor going haywire. The door clicked open. 2 men stepped inside. Both in suits. Both wearing the same blank, professional expression. The older one spoke first. You're awake. No shit, I wanted to say, but my throat was dry and raw. I swallowed, wincing. Where? My voice came out cracked, barely above a whisper. The younger agent stepped forward. You're safe. You're in a secure government facility. Government facility, not a hospital. I looked past them, toward the open door. A guard stood outside, armed. Something in my gut twisted. Why am I strapped down? My voice was stronger now. The two agents exchanged glances. You were unresponsive when we found you, the older one said. We had to take precautions. Where's Jake? I asked. Silence. The younger agent pulled out a folder, set it on the table next to me, opened it. I caught a glimpse of photos. My stomach turned. I knew what they were before I saw them. The basement, the ropes, the blood. Jake. What was left of him? I looked away. I didn't do this. We know, the agent said. That caught me off guard. What? The older one leaned forward. Tell us exactly what you remember. So I did. Everything. The dark website, the silent chamber, the emails, the hitman that wasn't a hitman, the thing that came for Jake, the photos, the video, then the basement, the way Jake had changed, the whispers, and then the thing that looked at me, that knew me. By the time I finished, my throat was raw, my hands shaking. The younger agent took a deep breath. This isn't the first time we've seen something like this. I blinked. What? The older one slid a single sheet of paper toward me. You hired a hitman, Marius. I hesitated, then nodded. He doesn't exist. A cold feeling crept into my gut. What do you mean? The younger agent tapped the paper. We've been monitoring these deep web hitman services for years. Most are scams. But the silent chamber. He exhaled. Every single person who successfully hires them disappears. No bodies, no evidence. Just gone. My skin crawled. But I wasn't... My voice caught. I wasn't supposed to disappear. I just wanted to scare your friend, the older agent finished. And instead, you offered him up. The room spun. You said you received an email, the younger one continued. No loose ends. That's the phrase they always send. Always. Meaning this has happened before. I shook my head. But who, what are they? The older agent's face darkened. We don't know. That scared me more than anything else. A government agency, people who should have the answers, had none. All they had were missing people. Am I safe? My voice was barely audible. The younger agent hesitated. We believe whatever was following you is gone. I didn't believe him. I could still feel it. That awful lingering presence. Like an unseen weight pressing on my back. Watching. The older agent sighed, rubbing his temples. Listen. You need to understand. This doesn't end here. My blood turned to ice. You went looking for them. You made contact. He stared at me, his expression grim. They don't like loose ends. If they decide you're a liability... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. A sick realization crawled into my brain. Jake was just the first. And now, I was next. The younger agent cleared his throat. We'll be relocating you. I stiffened. What? New name, new location. Witness protection, essentially. My stomach dropped. Witness protection? You think that'll stop them? We don't know. The older agent's voice was grim. But it's your best chance. I thought about the thing in the basement. The way it had looked at me. Like it recognized me. Like it had mocked me. I felt sick. The younger agent stood. We're arranging transport. You'll be moved within the hour. An hour. 1 hour. Then my entire life would be gone. A new identity. A new home. Running from something I couldn't even understand. The agents left. The door clicked shut behind them. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Then, a sound, a soft tap, coming from the mirror. My body locked up. I didn't want to look. I had to. I turned my head, slowly. The mirror was empty, but the handprint was back. The same 2 long fingers, the same wrong shape, still wet. The lights flickered, and somewhere, deep in the silence, a whisper. No loose ends. The lights went out. I bought a haunted MP3 from the dark web. When I played it, I heard my own voice, whispering, "Don't listen to this." I've done a lot of stupid things in my life. Reckless, impulsive, downright idiotic things. But I can tell you right now, nothing comes close to the mistake I made that night. I don't know if I'll ever be the same person again. You ever do something just because you're bored? That's how this all started. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't chasing nightmares. I was just a regular guy with too much time on his hands. But I guess that's all it takes, right? Just one wrong decision, one click, and suddenly, your life is ripped apart at the seams. It started about 2 months ago. I had just lost my job, and I was spiraling into this pit of mind-numbing nothingness, waking up at 2 p.m., scrolling through TikTok for hours, eating random junk from 7-Eleven because cooking felt like a chore. I wasn't depressed, not really, just detached. It felt like my life was happening in the background, and I was just a spectator. One night, I was sitting in my tiny apartment, lights off, laptop glowing in the darkness, just letting my mind drift. And then I started thinking about the dark web. I'd been on there before, mostly just to mess around, check out those weird conspiracy forums and deep web marketplaces. But I never bought anything. I always figured that was crossing a line, like stepping off the edge of a cliff just to see how far you'd fall. But that night, I guess I wanted to fall. So, I opened up Tor, clicked through some sketchy forums, and eventually found this site called Obscura Sounds. The layout was archaic, pitch black background, blood red text, like something straight out of 1999. But the posts were some next level, brain-melting insanity. The lost transmission of flight, 472, the pilot is screaming. Audio recovered from an exorcism, gone wrong, priest vanished. The sound of a dead man breathing, just pages of these horrifying, cryptic titles. I scrolled for what felt like hours, a sick curiosity growing in my stomach. Then I found it. Self-aware MP3, do not listen. I don't know why, but the second I saw it, my hands went cold. I clicked on it. The description was short, almost like a warning that wasn't meant to be read, just glanced at before the horror swallowed you whole. Found on a discarded phone in Moscow. The previous owner is missing. The file speaks. The file listens. The file remembers. Every listener reports hallucinations, paranoia, and other symptoms. One listener disappeared. Another listener changed. Do not download. You will regret it. The price? $10. It was almost insulting, like they were daring me to buy it, mocking me with the cheapness of my own doom. But here's the thing. I don't believe in curses. I don't believe in ghosts, demons, or haunted objects. What I do believe in is that the internet is full of attention-seeking weirdos who make up creepy stories to sell garbage to gullible people. So I bought it. Bitcoin transaction. No refunds. A few minutes later, I got a message. No sender name. Just a subject line. Download link. Whisper.mp3. At that exact moment, my phone buzzed. I looked down. No caller ID. I didn't answer. I don't know why. Just a gut feeling. I let it ring, and ring, and ring, and then it stopped. I turned back to my laptop. Clicked the link. The file was small. 3 minutes, 33 seconds. I stared at it. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. My phone buzzed again. Another no-caller ID. I picked it up this time. Slowly, almost as if my body was moving on its own. I pressed it to my ear. Silence. Then a whisper. Don't listen to it. Click. The call ended. I froze. My skin crawled. I checked my call history. No record of the call. I should have stopped there. I should have deleted the file, shut off my laptop, and gone to sleep. But I didn't. I reached for my headphones, and I pressed play. I should have stopped. I know I should have stopped. That phone call should have been my warning. The dead silence, that whisper, it should have been enough to make me throw my laptop out the goddamn window. But I didn't. Because curiosity is a disease, and I was already infected. I slid my headphones over my ears. The plastic felt ice cold against my skin. My hands were shaking, not from fear, not yet. It was something deeper, something I couldn't put a name to, like my body already knew what my mind refused to accept. I pressed play. At first, nothing, just silence. A deep, crushing, unnatural silence, like the world had just stopped breathing. I checked the volume, maxed out. Then a faint hiss, static, not the soft, white noise kind. No, this sounded wet, like something breathing through a throat full of mucus, like something alive. The static grew, swallowing the silence, like black ink spreading through water. And then, a sound. A voice, but not just any voice. My voice. Don't listen to this. I ripped the headphones off. My heart slammed against my ribs like it was trying to break free. My whole body went stiff, my skin prickling like a million ants were crawling underneath. I stared at the screen. The file was still playing. I didn't press pause. I didn't hear myself say that. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to think rationally. Maybe it was a trick, some audio manipulation. Maybe they somehow got a sample of my voice from my laptop's mic. Hackers can do that, right? It made sense. It had to. I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. I had to keep listening. So I did. I put the headphones back on, and this time it started immediately. The voice, my voice, was whispering, fast, breathless, panicked, like someone leaving a desperate voicemail before something found them. If you're hearing this, it's already too late. Please, you have to. A loud burst of static cut me off. Then something else. A sound I will never forget for as long as I live. It was chewing. Not the normal kind. No, this was wet, sloppy, wrong. Like someone trying to eat raw meat with their bare hands, tearing, swallowing, choking. I could hear something struggling, a gurgling sound, thick and sticky, like someone trying to scream with their throat full of blood. And underneath it all, something else. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving toward the mic. And then, something that made my entire body lock up in ice-cold terror. A whisper, but not in my voice. No, this voice was deeper. Wrong. It crawled into my ears, like spiders burrowing into my skull. He's listening now. I threw my headphones off so hard, they slammed against the desk. My whole body was trembling. My breath came in short, sharp gasps, my vision tunneling at the edges. I should have deleted the file. I should have wiped my entire goddamn hard drive. But I didn't. Because that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part came after. The second I yanked off those headphones, my phone vibrated. No caller ID. I just sat there, staring at it, my pulse hammering in my ears. It rang, and rang, and rang, until finally it stopped. I let out a slow, shaking breath. My whole body felt like static. Then my laptop screen flickered, and the goddamn file, started playing by itself. No headphones, just through the speakers. That same chewing sound filled my room. Wet, sloping, tearing flesh. My stomach turned over. Then the footsteps. Slow, heavy, getting closer. And then the whisper. He hears us. The screen went black, and something knocked on my door. Not the front door. My bedroom door. I was alone. I live alone. Every hair on my body stood up. My skin went ice cold. Another knock. Software insistent. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. And then, a scratch. Slow, deliberate. Something dragging its nails down the wood. I finally snapped out of it. I ran. Didn't look. Didn't stop. I just sprinted out of my apartment, like a bat out of hell. My heart pounding so hard, it felt like it was trying to break my ribs. I ran down the stairs. Barefoot, shirtless, didn't care. I didn't stop running until I was outside, standing on the freezing pavement, gasping for air. I don't remember how long I stood there. Long enough for my neighbors to give me weird looks. Long enough for the sun to start rising. And when I finally worked up the courage to go back inside, my laptop was open. The file was gone. But there was a new one. Breathing.mp3. And the timestamp said it was recorded last night at 3:33 a.m. while I was asleep. I didn't sleep. How the fuck could I sleep after what just happened? After I sat there, heart hammering in my chest, staring at my laptop screen, at that new file, knowing I didn't record it. Breathing, MP3. I just sat there, shaking, my mouth so dry it felt like it had been stuffed with cotton. My mind was screaming at me, begging me to delete it, to just throw my whole laptop out the window and pretend this never happened. But that's the thing. When something knows your name, knows your voice, knows where you sleep, you can't just pretend it never happened. I had to know. So, like an absolute fucking idiot, I clicked on it. The audio started immediately, and it was exactly what I thought it would be. Breathing. At first, it was faint, almost too soft to hear. Slow, rhythmic, like someone standing right next to the microphone. But not my breathing. I held my own breath, just to make sure. The recording kept going, and then something worse. The sound of bed sheets rustling. I swear to God, every hair on my body stood up at once. This wasn't just a random recording. It was me, sleeping. Someone, or something, had recorded me in my own bed, in my own room, while I was unconscious. My stomach lurched. I felt like I was going to throw up. My skin turned ice cold as my mind raced through 1,000 horrifying possibilities. Was it an intruder? A hacker? Or something else? I swallowed hard, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. But before I could pause it, the breathing on the recording changed. It got deeper, hungrier, like whoever or whatever was in that room with me wasn't just watching me, it was waiting. Then, at exactly 2 minutes and 13 seconds, it spoke. Not in words, in whispers, garbage words, meaningless at first, a language I didn't understand. The voice was low, raspy, wet, like it was speaking through torn vocal cords. But then, at 2 minutes and 48 seconds, it said something I did understand. It said my name. Not just my name. It said it in my own fucking voice. Wake up! The recording ended. I sat there staring at my screen, feeling like I was going to pass out. I didn't remember waking up last night. I didn't remember hearing anything. But my body remembered. Because as soon as I heard those words, as soon as I heard my own voice, whispering to myself in the dark, something deep in my brain screamed, "You've heard this before." And then I noticed something else. The timestamp, 3:33 a.m. Same time, the lost file appeared. I shut my laptop, stood up so fast, my chair nearly tipped over. I needed to get out. I needed air. But as soon as I turned toward the door, I felt it. Someone watching me. Not in the paranoid way. Not in the, oh, I feel like someone's behind me way. Number. This was real. I could feel it. Something in the room with me. I didn't look. I didn't fucking dare. I grabbed my keys off my desk and bolted out of there, slamming the door behind me, like that would somehow stop whatever it was from following. I didn't even know where I was going. I just walked, out of my building, onto the empty streets, cold air filling my lungs, burning my throat, grounding me. I pulled out my phone to check the time. 4:12 a.m. And that's when I saw it. A new notification. No caller ID. One new voicemail. My stomach dropped. My fingers felt numb as I tapped the notification, my body running on autopilot. I pressed play. At first, just static. The same wet, slithering static from the MP3 file. Then, breathing. Not mine. And then, a whisper. Not mine. Not human. Let us in. I dropped my phone. I ran. I don't know how long I ran. All I know is that at some point, I ended up in a fucking McDonald's, sitting in the corner, shaking, sipping the worst cup of coffee I've ever had in my life. I tried to tell myself it wasn't real, that I was just sleep-deprived, hallucinating. But when I finally worked up the courage to check my phone again, the voicemail was still there. The timestamp, 3:33 a.m. I never went back to my apartment, at least not that night. I booked a cheap motel across town and locked myself in, tried to sleep, failed, and when I finally did doze off, I had a dream, if you can even call it that. I was in my bed, my apartment. The room was wrong, the walls were too long, the shadows were too deep, my body was paralyzed. And standing in the doorway, staring at me, was me. Not an exact copy, not a twin. Something wearing my skin. Its head twitched, snapped sideways, like it had heard something. Then it started walking toward me, slow, heavy. And as it got closer, I realized it wasn't walking on 2 feet. It was crawling, hands and feet bent the wrong way, fingers stretching out too long, dragging itself toward me like a fucking spider. I wanted to scream, wanted to move, but I couldn't. And then it stopped, right next to my bed, face inches from mine, and in the darkness, I saw its mouth. It didn't have lips, just a hole that stretched open and whispered in my own voice, "Wake up!" And I did, bolted upright, drenched in sweat, gasping for air like I had been drowning. My phone was vibrating, no caller ID, and the second I picked it up, the call answered itself. Nothing, just breathing, then a whisper. "You left the door unlocked." Click. I ran out of the motel so fast, I didn't even put my shoes on. And when I finally got the courage to go back, just to grab my shit, the door, it was open, not forced, not broken, just open, like someone had walked right in, like someone was still inside. And on the bed, my laptop, still open, a new file waiting for me. Closer.mp3, and the timestamp, 3:33 a.m. I should have walked away. I should have left everything, my laptop, my phone, my entire fucking life, and disappeared. But I didn't, because I needed to know. I needed to know what was on that new file, the one waiting for me on my laptop, sitting perfectly centered on the stained motel bed, like someone had placed it there on purpose. Closer.mp3. I wanted to run. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to just turn around and leave, but I felt pulled toward it, like something had its hooks in my spine and was dragging me forward. I stepped inside the motel room, my heartbeat a hammer inside my skull. The door swung shut behind me, and I swear to God, I didn't touch it. I stood there for a long time, staring at my laptop screen. The file was waiting, and just like before, I pressed play. The sound hit me instantly, not like the others, not breathing, not static. This time, it was movement. Something shuffling, something dragging. I closed my eyes trying to picture it. The sound of bare, wet feet on a tile floor. The sticky, rhythmic pull of something pulling itself forward. Then a voice, breathless, choked. And this time, it wasn't mine. It was hers. A woman. Soft, weak, barely above a whisper. Please. My stomach turned. Her voice wasn't normal. It sounded wrong, like she had been crying for hours, like her throat was raw, like she was losing herself. And then, something worse. A knock. A single, slow knock. It came through my headphones so loud, so clear, that I ripped them off, gasping. The motel room was silent. I was alone. I swallowed, tried to slow my breathing, and, against every instinct in my body, put the headphones back on. The recording kept going. He's coming, the woman's voice whispered, and beneath her words, something else. Something breathing, deep, heavy, starving. It wasn't human. I know what a human breath sounds like. This was something else, something bigger, something wrong. And then, the knocking started again. Not in the recording, in the motel room. I froze. It was coming from inside the closet. Slow, hollow, deliberate. 3 knocks. Then silence. My body locked up. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The closet door was 6 feet away, closed. The air in the room felt thicker, like I was sinking into something. And then, another knock. Louder. I stumbled back, knocking over the motel chair. Something inside that closet was knocking to get out. And then, in my headphones, the woman's voice, whispering directly into my ear. Run! I ripped the headphones off. My pulse slammed in my ears. Then, the closet door handle turned. I lost my mind. I fucking ran. Didn't look back. Didn't think. Just ripped the door open, bolted out into the hallway barefoot, half-dressed, shaking. I didn't stop running until I was outside, gasping for air. And then, from the darkness of my motel room, I heard it. The creak of the closet door swinging open, something moving inside. And then, footsteps, coming toward the door. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just remember getting into my car, flooring the gas pedal, and tearing out of that parking lot like something was chasing me. Because maybe it was. I drove for hours, didn't check my phone, didn't stop, just kept going until the sun started rising, and I found myself somewhere completely different. A gas station, middle of nowhere. I pulled in, parked, and just sat there, shaking. My body felt detached, like I wasn't even inside myself anymore. And then, my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, but I did, because I had to. A single notification. New voicemail, 3:33 a.m. I didn't remember hearing my phone ring, but somehow, the voicemail was there. I tapped it, and the second it started playing, I wanted to die. At first, just breathing, but not human, not anymore. It was a rasping, twisted thing, like something learning how to breathe for the first time. Then, the knocking, the same 3 knocks, louder, hungrier, and then something moving toward the phone, dragging itself, crawling, and then the whisper, low, deep, but this time, not in her voice, not in mine, something else. You let me out. The voicemail ended, and right there, parked in that shitty gas station under the sick yellow glow of a flickering streetlight, I started to laugh. Not because it was funny, because it was already too late. Because I knew it was already with me, and it wasn't leaving. I drove until the sun was overhead. Didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't stop. Just kept pushing my foot against the gas, mile after mile, town after town, until I didn't even recognize where the fuck I was anymore. But it didn't matter, because I wasn't running from something. I was running with it. I could feel it, inside me, next to me, around me. The thing I had let out. I had let it out. And no matter how far I drove, no matter how many towns I passed, how many miles disappeared under my tires, I knew it was still there, still whispering, still waiting. And the worst part? I had started whispering back. I don't know how long I was on the road before my body finally gave up. I pulled into another gas station, parked next to an ancient-looking pickup truck covered in dirt, and just sat there, my hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. It was silent. No knocking, no breathing, just the sound of my own ragged exhaustion. Then, my phone screen lit up. New file received. I just sat there, staring at it. I didn't touch it, didn't need to, because I already knew what it was, the final file. And this time, I didn't press play. It played by itself. The first sound was laughter. Mine. Not the way I normally laugh. No, this was something sick. A broken version of my laugh, like someone had taken it, twisted it, stretched it into something it was never supposed to be. Then the voice. Low. Software rotten. Where are you going? My whole body turned to ice. Because this wasn't a recording. It wasn't coming from my phone. It was coming from the back seat. I didn't look. Couldn't. Because I knew. If I turned my head, if I saw what was sitting behind me, I would never be able to unsee it. But the voice kept going. You took me with you. My skin crawled. My chest felt like it was full of broken glass. Something shifted in the back seat, moving closer. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Something was behind me. I could feel it leaning forward, could feel the air getting heavier. And then, directly against my ear, let's listen together, I snapped. I threw the car door open, tumbled onto the pavement, and scrambled to my feet, chest heaving. My vision blurred, the world spun, and then the car door slammed shut, by itself. The windows were pitch black. Something was still inside. I didn't move, couldn't move. The gas station was empty. The sky above me was too wide. I felt like an insect, small, exposed, a thing about to be crushed. And then, my phone started ringing. No caller ID. A sharp, shrill sound in the dead silence. I didn't answer, didn't even touch it, but the ringing didn't stop. I just stood there, staring at the screen, watching my own reflection. And then, the ringing cut off. The screen changed. A single text message. Open your eyes. My pulse slammed against my ribs. I wasn't blinking. My eyes were already open. I felt something move behind me. Something cold. Something that had been there the whole time. And then, my phone screen glitched. The text changed. Turn around. And I did. I wish I hadn't. I wish I had just closed my eyes and let whatever was behind me take me. Because what I saw wasn't something that should exist. It wasn't a man, wasn't an animal. It was me, but not me. Something wearing me. Its head was tilted too far. Its limbs were too long. Its mouth was a black hole, stretching, stretching, stretching. And then it opened, not to speak, to scream. A noise that wasn't a noise. Something that crawled inside my ears, ripped apart my thoughts, shattered something inside me that I would never be able to fix. I stumbled backward, my mind splitting apart. And then, my phone buzzed again. One final message. The last file is ready. I looked back at my car. The driver's side door was open. My laptop was waiting on the passenger seat. The screen glowing. A new file, sitting in the center. Goodbye.mp3. I turned around. The thing that wore my face was smiling, waiting, because it knew that no matter how far I ran, no matter what I did, I would always listen. And this time, it wouldn't be a recording. This time, it would be real. I bought a serial killer's diary from the dark web. The last entry said, "Whoever reads this next is my next target." Okay, I know how this sounds. And yeah, I completely deserve every bit of judgment coming my way. Buying something from the dark web is already a bad idea. But buying this? I should have just closed my laptop and gone to bed. But I didn't. I've always been into weird internet rabbit holes. I watch those disturbing iceberg videos, listen to creepy podcasts, and yeah, I even lurk on r/n/o/s/l/e and other horror subs before bed, like an idiot. But this wasn't just some spooky story I read online. This actually happened to me. A few months ago, I got into the dark web out of curiosity. Nothing illegal, just browsing those sketchy marketplaces people always talk about. I expected to find the usual weird crap, counterfeit passports, mystery boxes, Hitman listings that are probably fake. But then, I saw it. The Diary of a Serial Killer, last updated 1 week ago. The listing had no description, no seller info, just a single blurry image of an old leather-bound notebook with a deep red stain on the corner. It was $200 in Bitcoin. Now, any normal person would have clicked away. But me? My dumbass brain went, damn, that'd make a cool conversation piece. So I bought it. The package arrived 3 days later. No return address, just a small cardboard box that smelled like mildew. When I opened it, the diary was heavier than I expected. The leather cover was cracked and aged, but the pages inside, pristine. And the handwriting, God, it was neat. Almost too neat. I flipped through the first few pages, expecting it to be some edgy, fake, creepypasta tier nonsense. But the way it was written, it felt real. July 4th, 2017. The first one was easy. I thought I'd feel something. Guilt, fear, maybe even satisfaction. But I felt nothing. The knife went in, the body stopped moving, and that was it. Just like turning off a light switch. The hardest part was getting the blood out from under my fingernails. I won't lie, reading that made my stomach drop. But I kept going. The diary spanned years, entry after entry, describing people disappearing, the methods used, the mistakes made, and the locations. They weren't random. Starbucks in New York, Times Square, Motel 6, Los Angeles, McDonald's in Chicago, late night shift. Real places, places I'd been to. The handwriting stayed eerily perfect up until the last page. That's when it changed. Erratic, rushed, almost desperate. And that's when I saw it. Whoever reads this next is my next target. I felt my chest tighten. My room suddenly felt too quiet, like someone was listening. I shut the diary and laughed it off. I mean, come on. It's probably some elaborate prank, maybe part of some ARG. But then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, text message. You shouldn't have read that. I stared at the screen, my hands ice cold. Then another text. I'm close. My apartment door creaked. And that's when I knew. I fucked up. I don't remember standing up. 1 second, I was staring at my phone, heart slamming against my ribs, and the next, I was on my feet, every nerve in my body screaming at me to move. The door, my bedroom door, it was open. I live alone. I was alone when I came in. I was alone when I locked the door behind me, but it was open now. I forced myself to listen, really listen. My apartment had that kind of silence that wasn't real silence, the kind where you just know someone else is breathing in the same space as you. My fingers tightened around my phone. I checked the last text again, hoping, praying it was some dumb joke. But then my phone vibrated. New message. I see you. Every muscle in my body locked up. My stomach clenched so hard I thought I'd be sick. My walls felt too close, my ceiling too low, like my entire apartment was shrinking around me. Then, something moved. Not in my bedroom, not in the hallway, from the closet. My closet door was open just an inch wider than it had been before. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys. I just remember sprinting for the front door, throwing it open so hard it slammed against the wall. I didn't care if I was barefoot. I didn't care if I looked insane, bolting down 3 flights of stairs, like I was on fire. I didn't stop running until I hit the 7-Eleven 2 blocks away. Bright lights, people, cameras. I sucked in a shaky breath and finally checked my phone again. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. One last message. You're fast. Let's see how long you can run. I didn't go back that night. I couldn't. Instead, I got a motel room. One of those sketchy places where the guy at the front desk barely looks at you and everything smells like old cigarettes. I locked the door. I pushed the shitty wooden chair against it, and I sat on the bed, staring at my phone, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. No more messages, no weird noises, no one banging on my door. At some point, exhaustion hit me like a freight train, and I passed out fully clothed, back pressed against the wall, phone clutched in my hand. I woke up at 3:42 a.m. to my phone vibrating. Unknown number, incoming call. I don't know why I answered. Maybe I thought it'd be over if I just faced it. Maybe I was too scared to ignore it. I put the phone to my ear. For a few seconds, nothing, just breathing. Then, a whisper, a deep, rasping voice that sent ice through my veins. You're in room 106, right? I shot up so fast the bed creaked. My head whipped toward the motel door. My feet were frozen to the floor. Go ahead. Open the door. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I know you're awake. The doorknob rattled. I choked on my own breath, stumbling backward. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. I scrambled for something, anything, to defend myself. Then, silence. The doorknob stopped moving. I stood there, heart hammering so hard I swore my ribs would crack. Then my phone buzzed. A picture. I didn't want to look. I knew I shouldn't look, but I did. It was a picture of me, sleeping. The motel window was behind me in the photo. The curtains were open. I turned so fast I nearly fell over. My fingers fumbled for the cheap plastic curtain. I yanked it aside. Nothing. Just the empty parking lot. Flickering streetlights. I was shaking so hard, my legs barely held me up. I backed away from the window, grabbed my backpack, and ran out the door without even looking. I drove. I don't even remember getting in my car. I just remember pressing the gas pedal down like my life depended on it. I didn't go home. I didn't go back to the motel. I just drove. And then I realized, whoever it was, they weren't just following me. They'd been watching me long before I ever bought the diary. I don't remember how long I drove. maybe hours, maybe the whole night. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight, my knuckles were white. The roads were empty, just endless highways, and the occasional gas station, glowing in the dark like an oasis. At some point, my brain forced me to stop. I was running on fumes, both the car and my body. My head was pounding, my vision blurred. I pulled into a 24-hour diner in the middle of nowhere, parked at the very edge of the lot, and just sat there, trying to breathe. The messages, the picture, the voice on the phone. Who the fuck was this? How long had they been watching me? Was this all because of the diary, or was I already a target before I even bought it? I needed answers. I grabbed the diary from my backpack. It was still ice cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer. My fingers trembled as I flipped back to the last entry. Whoever reads this next is my next target. My stomach twisted. What if this wasn't just a threat? What if it was a promise? What if every person who had ever read this book before me was already dead? I shut the diary and looked up. That's when I saw the man, a figure, standing across the parking lot, just outside the glow of the streetlights. He wasn't moving, just standing, watching. My mouth went dry. He was tall, too tall, his head slightly tilted, like he was studying me. The longer I looked, the more I realized I couldn't see his face, just the vague outline of his body, the way his shoulders slumped forward like something was wrong with them. I blinked. He was closer. I hadn't seen him move, but he was closer now, just at the edge of the lot. My heart slammed against my ribs. My breathing turned shallow. I locked my doors. I looked down at my phone. No new messages, no calls. I looked back up. Gone. My entire body locked up. My ears strained for any sound. Footsteps. Breathing. Anything. Nothing. I wanted to believe I imagined him, that my brain, fried from fear and exhaustion, was playing tricks on me. Then the diner door creaked open. A gust of cold air swept through the lot. The scent of rain, metal, something rotting. I turned. The waitress by the window was staring at me. She looked pale, eyes wide, unblinking. I followed her gaze. There, handprints, pressed against the inside of my car window. But I never heard the door open. I never saw him get in. I don't remember getting out of the car. I just remember bursting into the diner, breathless, dizzy, hands still shaking. The waitress flinched when I stumbled in. "You okay, hun?" she asked, her voice uneasy. I turned to look out the window. My car sat there, untouched. The handprints were gone. I swallowed hard. "Did you see anyone?" She hesitated. "You came in alone." I wanted to believe her, but then I noticed something. The reflection. In the diner window, my car was still visible, but there was something wrong with it. Something was inside. A shape. A dark, twisted shadow, sitting in the driver's seat. The outline of a head, hunched shoulders. And then, it turned. The reflection smiled at me, a grin that stretched too wide, filled with too many teeth. I spun around. My car was empty, but when I looked back at the window, the reflection was still there, still smiling. The waitress grabbed my arm. "Honey, you don't look so good." I ripped my gaze away and backed up. I just need a minute." She nodded slowly, but kept watching me, like she knew I was about to bolt. I could still see my car in the corner of my eye. The reflection hadn't moved. It was still staring at me. I left the diner at dawn. I wanted to believe I was safe in there, but I could feel it. Something outside was waiting for me. My phone buzzed again. Another text. "Don't look in the mirror." I almost dropped the phone. My breath hitched. as I slowly turned my head and froze. The diner's bathroom was behind me, a single, cracked mirror, and there was something standing in it. Not me. Something else. A figure, towering, hunched, face hidden in shadows. But its hands, its fingers were too long. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. My own reflection was gone. It was just him. His fingers twitched. The light flickered. Then, he moved. I ran. I didn't look back. I don't remember how I got back to my car. I don't remember starting the engine or speeding out of that parking lot like something was chasing me. Maybe something was. I didn't stop driving until I saw other cars. A busy road, civilization. But the moment I thought I was safe, my phone vibrated one last time. A picture. It was me, standing outside my car. My face was blurred, distorted, like something had its hands wrapped around my head, like something was right behind me. I shouldn't have bought that diary. I shouldn't have read it, because now I think I understand what that last entry really meant. It wasn't a warning, it was an invitation, and I already let something in. I don't sleep anymore. I can't. Not after what happened last night. Not after what I saw. I don't know how to explain it. I don't even know if I should explain it. But I have to tell someone. Because if this is really happening, if this thing is real, then I think I'm already too late. I drove for hours after leaving that diner. I didn't have a destination. I just needed to get away. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw something in the back seat. A shape, a shadow, breathing. But every time I turned around, the seat was empty. I stopped looking after a while. It was easier to pretend. I ended up at a cheap motel on the outskirts of some small town, the kind of place where the neon sign flickers and the guy at the front desk looks like he stopped giving a shit about life years ago. I paid in cash, no questions asked. Room 209, second floor. I locked the door, bolted it, checked the closet, the bathroom, under the bed, even shoved the dresser in front of the door just to be sure. Then I did something stupid. I opened the diary again. I don't know why. Maybe I thought there'd be an answer. Maybe I wanted to find something, anything, that could explain what was happening to me. But as I flipped through the pages, I noticed something I hadn't before. The last entry, the one that said, "Whoever reads this next is my next target." It was different now. The handwriting was the same. The ink was the same. But the words had changed. Now, it said, "You let me in." I felt my stomach drop. I flipped to the previous page, my hand shaking. Another new message, scrawled in jagged, desperate letters. "Look behind you." I didn't. I couldn't. My body refused to move. Then my phone buzzed. A new picture. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. It was my motel room, taken from inside the closet. I couldn't breathe. The closet door was open, just a crack. I hadn't left it open. I forced myself to stand, every nerve in my body screaming at me to run, to get the fuck out. But I had to see. I had to know. I took one step toward the closet, then another. The air was thick, suffocating. My vision blurred at the edges. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Darkness. Then, a mirror. A full-length mirror, standing inside the closet, facing me. But the reflection, it wasn't me. It looked like me. Same face, same clothes, same wide, terrified eyes. But it wasn't me, because the reflection was smiling, and I wasn't. I stumbled back, my breath hitching. The thing in the mirror tilted its head, still grinning that awful, too wide grin. Then it moved. Not me, just the reflection. It raised one hand, pressed it against the glass, and I felt fingers on my back. I spun around, but there was nothing there. When I turned back to the mirror, it was closer. I backed up, heart slamming against my ribs. The thing in the reflection stepped forward. Its smile stretched, warping, distorting. Then it spoke, not out loud, inside my head. "You are mine now." The lights flickered. The air turned ice cold, and then the glass shattered. I don't know how long I was out. I woke up on the motel floor, head pounding, ears ringing. The mirror was gone. Not broken. Gone. Just an empty closet. Like it was never there. I grabbed my phone. No new messages. No missed calls. Nothing. For a second, I almost believed I imagined it. That it was just another nightmare. Then I saw my reflection. Not in a mirror. In the motel window. And it was still smiling. I left that motel and never looked back. I don't know where to go. I don't know how to stop this. But I know one thing for sure. This thing, whatever it is, it's not just following me. It's inside me. And I think it's waiting for something. Waiting for me to let go. I don't know how much longer I can fight this. I can feel it now. Something inside me, gnawing at the edges of my mind, like teeth scraping against bone. I don't know when it got in. Maybe it was the moment I read that last entry. Maybe it was waiting long before that, watching, whispering. But now, it's getting stronger, and I don't think I can stop it. I drove for days after leaving that motel. No destination, no plan, just me and the road, the hum of the tires beneath me, the weight of something wrong pressing against my skull. I avoided mirrors, windows, anything with a reflection, because every time I caught a glimpse of myself, it wasn't me looking back. I tried sleeping in my car once. Big mistake. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. to something breathing against my ear. At first, I thought it was just a dream. Then I felt the pressure, something heavy, cold, pressing down on my chest. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My eyes darted around the car, panic setting in, and then I saw it, in the rearview mirror, a shape in the back seat. Not a person, not even a shadow, just wrong. Its head was twisted at an unnatural angle. Its fingers, my fingers, dug into my own shoulders, gripping me from behind. The grin on its face was impossibly wide, stretching past the limits of human skin. And the worst part, it looked so fucking happy. Then it whispered something, not out loud, inside my head. "Let me in." The moment those words crawled into my skull, my body jerked upright, like a puppet yanked by its strings. I gasped, sucking in air like I'd been drowning. The back seat was empty. The car was silent, but I could still feel the weight of its hands on my shoulders, like it had never really left. I kept driving. I barely ate, barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it breathing, felt its fingers curling around my spine. And then the text messages started again. At first, they were simple. "You're almost ready." Then, "You're looking more like me every day." The next one came with a picture. It was me, sitting in my car, but my reflection in the window was still smiling. I smashed my phone against the dashboard. The screen cracked. The messages didn't stop. I ended up in a town I didn't recognize, a place that felt too quiet, empty streets, flickering streetlights, the kind of town you only see in the background of a bad dream. I checked into a motel, a different one this time. I didn't even bother locking the door. What was the point? I knew it would get in. It was already inside me. At exactly 3:14 a.m., I woke up, not because of a sound, not because of movement, but because I wasn't alone. Something was in the room with me. I could feel it. My breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. My fingers trembled as I reached for the bedside lamp, desperate for light, for anything to ground me. The moment I flicked it on, the mirror across the room shattered. Glass exploded outward, shards scattering across the floor. My pulse pounded in my skull, and then I saw it. Not in the mirror, in the shards. A dozen broken reflections, each one showing something different. One of them was me, standing in the corner, watching myself sleep. Another showed me grinning, eyes black as pits, teeth too sharp, too wrong. But the worst one was moving, slowly, crawling out of the broken glass. A hand, a face, mine, but not mine. The thing in the reflection was leaving the mirror. I scrambled back, heart slamming against my ribs. My head spun. The air felt thick, suffocating. The room tilted. And then, it stepped onto the floor. I couldn't move. It stood there, tilting its head, studying me with empty, hungry eyes. Its grin stretched wider. And then it spoke. Not out loud. Inside me. "You've been running long enough." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. "It's time to switch places." The lights flickered. The walls rippled, like they weren't solid anymore. And then, everything went black. I woke up in the motel bed. Sunlight streamed through the window. The mirror was whole again. My heart pounded. Was it a dream? A hallucination? Then I saw the reflection. I was still lying in bed, but my reflection was standing up and smiling. My blood turned to ice. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. I tried to scream, but my mouth wouldn't open. Then the reflection leaned down, pressing a finger to its lips. "Shh!" It picked up my phone. My fingers twitched, but I couldn't stop it. I watched, trapped in my own body, as it typed out a new message, a new listing. The diary of a serial killer, last updated 1 week ago. For sale, for the next idiot, the next body, the next reflection. Then it turned to the mirror, adjusting its smile. My smile. See you soon. I found a dark web conspiracy site that claims celebrities aren't human. Then I saw one blink the wrong way on live TV. Alright, I need to start this off by saying I was never a conspiracy guy. Like, at all. I'm the type of dude who'd roll his eyes at people talking about lizard people, government mind control, or secret societies running the world. But after what I saw a few months ago, I don't know what to believe anymore. I guess I should start from the beginning. It all started when I was messing around on the internet late at night, like I usually do. You know how it is. 1 minute you're watching YouTube, the next you're knee-deep in some obscure Reddit thread about missing people in national parks. That night, though, I stumbled into something way worse. A friend of mine, who's always been into creepy internet stuff, sent me a link. No message, no context, just a link. It was called theywalkamongus.onion. Right away, I knew it was a dark website. I've messed around on the dark web before, mostly just out of curiosity. Nothing illegal, just checking out weird forums, creepy args, and those sketchy Hitman for hire sites that are probably run by the feds. But this was different. The site looked old, like it hadn't been updated since the early 2000s. The background was just black, with red text, and the homepage had a single sentence. They are not like us. They never were. Below that, there was a list of celebrity names. Huge ones. Movie stars, politicians, pop singers, basically anyone who had ever been on a red carpet. Next to each name, there was a status. Some said safe, but most of them said compromised or replaced. I scrolled down, seeing names that freaked me out. People I watched on TV all the time. People I followed on Instagram. And then, under each name, there were links to video clips. Some from interviews, some from live events. The captions were all the same. Watch closely. The signs are there. Now, I wasn't about to sit here and believe some deep web lunatic claiming that A-list celebrities weren't human. But I clicked on one of the videos anyway, just to see what kind of crazy stuff they were pushing. It was a clip of a late-night talk show, one of those big ones, like Fallon or Kimmel. The guest was a famous pop star. You'd definitely know her if I said her name. She was smiling, laughing, totally normal. But then, right at the 14-second mark, something happened. Her eyes flickered, not in the normal way, not like a trick of the camera. It was subtle, but I swear to God, for half a second, they went completely black. No whites, no pupils, just solid black. And then, just as quickly, they were normal again. I replayed it, thinking maybe it was some kind of glitch. But the more I watched, the more I noticed it. Little things. The way her smile held for just a second too long. The way she blinked at weird intervals, like she was remembering to do it. The way her hands twitched unnaturally when she moved them. I scrolled to the comments. Most were full of people freaking out, posting timestamps, arguing whether it was edited. But one comment stuck out. Look at her neck at 23 seconds. You're not supposed to see that. So I did. And that's when I felt the first real chill go down my spine. For just a fraction of a second, the skin on her neck, right above her collarbone, rippled. Like it wasn't attached right. Like something underneath was shifting. I sat back in my chair, heart pounding. I told myself it was fake. A deep fake. An AI-generated trick. But I kept watching video after video. And in every single one, there was something off. Weird blinking patterns. Twitches that didn't seem human. And sometimes, when the light hit just right, their skin would ripple, just like hers did. At that point, I should have closed the site. I should have called it a night and laughed it off as some elaborate hoax. But then, I saw my own name on the list. I stopped breathing. There it was, right near the bottom. My full name, first and last. Next to it, the word, observing. My stomach dropped. I clicked on my name, but it didn't lead anywhere. Just refreshed the page. I wasn't famous. I wasn't even remotely well known. Why the hell would my name be on a list with celebrities and politicians? And then, my phone buzzed. A new notification from Instagram. A DM request from an account with no profile picture, no posts, no followers. Just a single message. Now that you've seen them, they've seen you. I locked my phone, heart pounding. Maybe it was my friend messing with me. Maybe I was just being paranoid. But then, I heard a noise outside my window. A tapping. Slow. Rhythmic. I live on the second floor, and there's no balcony. I sat there, completely still. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. The tapping on my window didn't stop. It was soft, deliberate, like whoever was out there wanted me to know they were there, but didn't want to scare me off too quickly. Which was funny, because I was already scared out of my fucking mind. I live on the second floor of an apartment complex in downtown Chicago. There's no fire escape outside my window, no ledge big enough for someone to stand on, just a sheer drop to the alley below. And yet, something was up there, tapping. I didn't move at first. My brain was trying to logic its way out of this. Maybe it was a tree branch. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was just imagining it, letting the creepy dark web stuff get to me. Then my phone buzzed again. Another DM. Same account. No name, no profile picture. Just another message. Look at it. My skin went ice cold. My whole body locked up. I could feel something on the other side of the glass, watching me, waiting. I don't know why I did it, but I turned my head just a little, just enough to see the reflection in my monitor. And that's when I almost screamed. There was a face outside my window. Number, not a face. A shape that was trying to be a face. It looked human, but wrong. The eyes were too big, stretched wide and unblinking. The skin was pale, almost translucent, like it had been stretched too tight over the skull underneath. And the mouth, Jesus Christ, the mouth. It was too wide. The lips pulled into something that was almost a smile, but didn't quite understand how smiling worked. And then it blinked. Not normally, not like a person. It blinked sideways. I jumped up so fast I knocked over my chair. The thing outside didn't flinch. It just kept staring, kept smiling. I grabbed my phone and backed toward the door. My apartment is small, just a one-bedroom, but in that moment it felt massive. Too much space between me and the exit. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my body wasn't listening. Another tap on the window. Software gentle, almost playful, like it knew I wasn't going anywhere. I forced myself to move, stumbling towards the door with my phone still in my hand. I wasn't thinking, just acting on instinct. But right as I reached the doorknob, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Don't open the door. I froze. My fingers were already wrapped around the handle. Buzz. It's inside. I turned my head slowly. The living room was dark, except for the glow of my computer screen. My eyes darted around, searching for movement. Then I saw it. The closet door. It was open. Just a crack. I always keep my closet closed. Always. Something shifted inside. A shape. A shadow. Breathing. My own breath caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but I didn't know where. Outside was bad. Inside was worse. My brain was stalling out, trying to decide which nightmare to face first. And then, the closet door creaked. Slowly. Inches at a time. I gripped my phone so tight, my knuckles turned white. I wanted to call someone. 911. My friend. Anyone. But my hands were shaking too much to dial. The door opened wider. And then, a hand reached out. Number. Not a hand. Something shaped like a hand. It had too many joints. Too many knuckles. The fingers were long, thin, moving in a way that felt wrong. Boneless. Like tendrils stuffed inside human skin. It gripped the edge of the door, and then slowly, its head emerged from the darkness. My stomach turned. My vision swam. It was the same thing from the window. The exact same thing. How the fucks was it in two places at once? I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My legs were jelly. My heart a jackhammer against my ribs. And then, it smiled. A slow, stretching, unnatural grin. And in the dim light of my apartment, I saw it. The same glitch I'd seen in those videos. The skin on its face, rippled, like something else was underneath, like something else was wearing it. I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I yanked open the door and sprinted down the hall, my bare feet slapping against the cold floor. Behind me, I heard movement, skittering, not footsteps, not normal human sounds, something dragging itself after me. I didn't look back. I hit the stairwell full speed, nearly tripping over my own feet. I bolted down 2 flights, bursting out into the freezing Chicago night. The street was empty, silent, but I wasn't alone. across the street, under the sickly yellow glow of a streetlight. It stood there, perfectly still, its head tilted, watching me, its mouth still stretched into that awful, awful smile. And then, it spoke, not out loud, nor with its mouth, inside my head. 2 words. "We see you." I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached a 24-hour McDonald's a few blocks away. I locked myself in the bathroom, shaking so bad I thought I might pass out. My phone was still in my hand, buzzing over and over again. I forced myself to look. The messages were still coming. "We see you. We see you. We see you." Over and over and over. I threw my phone against the wall. I haven't been back to my apartment since. I don't know where to go. I don't know who to tell. And I don't know what's worse, the fact that they're watching me, or the fact that sometimes, when I pass by a TV in a public place, one of them looks directly at me and smiles. I don't remember leaving the McDonald's. I don't even remember how I got to the motel. All I know is that one moment I was shaking in that disgusting fast food bathroom, and the next I was slamming the door to a dingy, cigarette-stained motel room, locking every single deadbolt like my life depended on it. Because it did. My phone was dead. I had thrown it against the wall at McDonald's, and even if it still worked, I wouldn't have touched it. Every message, every vibration felt like a needle in my spine. I could feel them watching me, not just through the screen, through everything. I pulled the curtains shut. They were cheap, thin, not enough. I grabbed the motel's crusty, yellowed bedsheets and pinned them against the windows. Then I turned the TV on, not for entertainment, not to relax, but for noise. I needed something, anything, to drown out the silence. But the silence didn't stay gone for long. I don't know how much time passed. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall, my brain running on static. The TV buzzed in the background, playing some late-night infomercial about a kitchen knife set, the kind of white noise that should have been harmless. Then it glitched, just for a second. A flicker, a distortion. The infomercial host's face, twisted, stretched, snapped back. I sat up, pulse spiking. Another glitch. This time, the audio cut out for a split second. Then the screen changed. It wasn't the knife commercial anymore. It wasn't a channel I had ever seen before. A dimly lit stage, a wooden chair, empty. The camera was set at an awkward angle, slightly tilted. The screen was grainy, like old VHS footage. The audio hummed with static. And then, something stepped into frame. It was wearing a human face. I say wearing because that's exactly what it looked like someone had peeled off a person's face and stretched it over something that wasn't supposed to have skin. The eye holes were too large, too dark, and behind them, something else was moving. The thing stood there for a moment, twitching slightly, as if adjusting to the weight of its disguise. Then, without a word, it sat down, and the second it did, I heard something move behind me. My entire body went cold. The motel room was tiny, just a bed, a nightstand, and a bathroom. There was nowhere for someone to hide, but I could feel it. The same way you know when someone is standing behind you, staring. I turned my head, just a fraction. The bathroom door was slightly open, and the mirror inside was facing me. There was something standing in the reflection, tall, wrong, smiling. I bolted, didn't think, didn't breathe. I ripped the motel door open, sprinted out barefoot into the night, into the freezing air, into the empty parking lot, where every shadow felt like it was stretching toward me. I ran until my lungs burned. until my feet were raw, until my vision blurred. I don't even know how far I got before my legs finally gave out. I collapsed against a brick wall in some dark alley, gasping for air, my brain still catching up to what had just happened. And that's when I heard the TV again, not from inside a building, from my phone, which I didn't have. I turned my head slowly. Across the alley, an old TV sat in a pile of garbage bags. It shouldn't have been on. It wasn't plugged into anything, but the screen flickered, buzzing with static. And then, the stage, the chair, and it, still sitting there, still wearing that too loose human face. But this time, it moved. It tilted its head, and then, in a voice that was layered, distorted, like multiple people speaking at once, it said, "You're next." The screen cut to black, and in the silence that followed, I heard it, not from the TV, not from my phone, from behind me, a wet, stretching sound, like skin being pulled too tight, like something reshaping itself. I didn't turn around. I ran, again, and this time, I don't think I can stop. I don't remember running into the streets, but I remember the feeling, that hollowed out, sinking sensation in my chest, like my body had already accepted death, like something had already claimed me and was just waiting for my mind to catch up. The city was empty. It shouldn't have been. This was Chicago, for God's sake. There were always people, always cars, always noise. But tonight, nothing. No headlights, no footsteps, no distant sirens. Just a long stretch of darkened buildings and dead streetlights. The entire world felt off, like a movie set after the cameras stopped rolling. And then, something moved. Not ahead of me, not behind me. Above, I stopped, gasping, every muscle locking up. The rooftops were lined with them, dark, twisted outlines, barely visible against the sky, watching me. Some crouched, others stood perfectly still, their limbs too long, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. The air was heavy, with something rotten, something thick that crawled into my lungs and made it hard to breathe. Then, all at once, they smiled, mouths stretching, skin pulling, too wide, too deep. Something inside me snapped. I bolted down the nearest alley, feet bare and bleeding against the rough pavement. My breath came in sharp, panicked gasps, but I couldn't stop, couldn't slow down. I felt them shifting above me, following, matching my speed effortlessly. And then I saw it. A liquor store, flickering neon sign barely clinging to life. The first sign of life I'd seen all night. I didn't think. I lunged for the door, throwing my entire weight against it. The glass rattled. The little bell above jingled weakly as I stumbled inside. The air was stale, thick with cigarette smoke and old beer. The cashier, an old man with sunken eyes and a blank expression, didn't even look up from his newspaper, like he hadn't heard me. I staggered to the counter, panting. Please, please, you have to help me." The old man turned the page, didn't blink. Something was wrong. Deeply, profoundly wrong. I glanced at the security monitors behind him. The cameras should have been showing the aisles, the entrance. They weren't. Every screen showed the same thing. The chair, the stage, the thing in the mask. But this time, the chair wasn't empty. There was someone sitting there, someone I recognized. It was me, my body locked up. I turned, slowly, toward the refrigerated glass doors at the back of the store, using them as a mirror. My own reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed, disheveled, shaking. And behind me, over my shoulder, the old man. Only, it wasn't the old man anymore. His head twitched, jerked. His jaw cracked sideways, stretching wider and wider until his skin began to split. Something was inside him. Something was trying to get out. His hand slammed onto the counter, fingers bending the wrong way. His skin rippled like something underneath was crawling upward, twisting, pushing out. And then his face peeled away. Like a cheap, wet mask, the entire front of his head slid off, slapping onto the counter with a sickening, wet smack. Beneath it, something pulsed, shifting between muscle and bone, reforming, adjusting. And then it looked at me, not with eyes, with something that pretended to be eyes, and it smiled. My entire body rejected reality. I turned and sprinted toward the exit, barely registering the bell jingling again as I threw myself back into the street. But the street wasn't empty anymore. The buildings were lined with people. Not people. Things wearing people. Their skin was too loose, their movements too stiff, like puppets still learning how to mimic real life. Every single one of them was staring at me. And then, as one, they blinked sideways. My stomach lurched. I stumbled backward, hands shaking. They tilted their heads in perfect unison, watching. And then they spoke. Not with their mouths, not with sound. Inside my head, a single synchronized voice. The broadcast is not over. I couldn't move, couldn't think. My own thoughts felt invaded, like something else was pushing into them, filling them with static, rewriting them. And then, one of them stepped forward. It was a woman, or it used to be. Her face was almost right, but the mouth was too wide, the smile frozen in place. She walked toward me, movements stiff, unnatural, like a marionette, being dragged forward by invisible strings. My whole body screamed at me to run, but my feet wouldn't move. She got closer, closer, and then, in that same layered, warped voice, she whispered, "You have already been replaced." And then she smiled, and I smiled back, because she was right. I felt my own lips stretching, my own skin shifting, and in that moment, I knew. The broadcast had already ended, and I wasn't me anymore. I don't know if I ever really made it out. I mean, sure, I can still feel my feet slamming against the pavement. I can still hear the rasp of my breath, the wet, animal-like panting of something chasing me. I can still remember the way my body jerked and spasmed, like something inside me was trying to fight for control. But I don't think I ever really left that place. Not completely. And I don't think you will either. I ran. I ran until my vision blurred, until the lights of the city flickered and warped, like I was seeing everything through a glitching screen. Every shadow stretched. Every reflection in the glass buildings lagged behind, showing me things that weren't there anymore. Or worse, things that weren't there yet. They were still coming after me. The not people. They walked in perfect, unnatural synchronization, moving without sound, without effort, their heads tilting in unison as I stumbled forward like a drunk, barely keeping myself upright. And then, the billboards changed. The giant electronic ads that lined the buildings, the ones playing perfume commercials, car ads, celebrity endorsements, they stopped. All of them. Every screen in the city went dark. And then, the static came. It hissed from phone screens, from televisions inside apartment windows, from LED signs and traffic cameras and reflections in puddles. A low, pulsing hum, like a heartbeat beneath the city itself. And then, a face. Not a face. A mask. That thing from the broadcast. The thing that sat in the chair. The thing that had stretched its skin too tightly, molded itself into something human-shaped, but not quite right. It was everywhere. Every screen. Every reflection. and its mouth. Its horrible, splitting, peeling mouth. It moved, not in time with the sound, not like speech. It lagged, like a badly synced video, mouthing words that didn't match the noise coming from the speakers. And then I heard my own voice. You have already been replaced. The words I'd heard from that not woman. The words that had made my skin crawl. But this time, I felt my own lips move with them. I stopped running, my feet locked in place. And my reflection, the one in the glass of a nearby shop window, didn't stop with me. It kept walking. It kept moving, one slow, deliberate step at a time, even as I stood there, frozen. I watched, paralyzed, as my own face turned to look at me, and smiled. And then, it pressed its hands against the glass, and started pushing through. The surface rippled, like the window wasn't glass at all, but water, like it was a barrier between two worlds, and whatever was on the other side was coming through. I staggered back, finally breaking whatever had me frozen in place. My reflection didn't move back with me. It stepped forward, and the moment its foot touched the pavement, the entire world fractured. I don't know how else to describe it. The streets warped, buildings stretched and snapped out of focus. People walking along the sidewalks jerked and twitched, like they were being fast-forwarded and rewound at the same time. And then, the sky split open. It wasn't a crack. It wasn't an explosion. It was like someone had peeled back the film of reality, like tearing the plastic wrap off an old VHS tape. And behind it, I saw them. The real ones. Not the masks. Not the flesh they wore. The things underneath. Shapes. Impossible shapes. Moving wrong. Existing wrong. Like something that had tried to force itself into a body that wasn't built for it. And they saw me. Not just the thing that wore my face. All of them. They had been waiting. They had been watching. And now, they knew I could see them, and they wanted me back. I don't remember what happened next. I don't remember how I got out. All I know is that I woke up in my apartment like nothing had ever happened, like I had never left, like everything was normal. But it's not. It's not. Because now, when I look outside, I see them, in the reflections of car windows, in the glass of shop doors, in the dead, frozen eyes of celebrities on TV. They are still here. They are still watching. And worst of all, I think they let me go on purpose, because sometimes, when I look in the mirror, I see something else looking back, and it smiles. I don't know how much time I have left. I don't know if I've already been switched. But if you're reading this, if you've ever seen a face glitch, if you've ever seen skin ripple in the wrong light, don't ignore it. Don't blink. Don't look away. Because the moment you see them, they see you too.